Every single second, minute, hour, day that passes on this earth, we are getting closer and closer to the inevitable day that Messi and Ronaldo retire. The day that this happens, streets will be closed, tears will be shed, and there will be years of memories to look back on forever. But I, for one, think that future generations of football are finally going to be able to breathe once these two retire, because in a way, they kind of ruined football. Okay, maybe I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, right? Maybe, but I needed you to click on this video. These two, without a doubt, are the greatest players ever. Your uncles might disagree with you and bring up legends of yesterday, like Maradona and Pele. And maybe your tío will tell you that these guys have nothing on Cuauhtemoc Blanco. But if we're being real, Messi and Ronaldo take the cake for number 1 and number 2. For just about a decade straight, these two dominated world football. No one even came close, putting up insane numbers, weekly 10 out of 10 performances, winning pretty much every trophy that there was to win. And then even after this decade of straight dominance, these two have persisted and have remained some of the best players in the world even in their later years. Essentially, no matter your allegiance, we've been blessed to watch the two best players of all time go at it on a weekly basis. Do you know how insane that is? Literally, these two were at their peak at the same time. Usually there's a generational gap between one potential GOAT to another, and then even then it's usually just like one player. Think of Pele to Maradona, Jordan to Kobe, Kobe to LeBron, etc. But these two have changed football forever through their sheer influence. However, now I think is where I need to stake my claim. For as much brilliance as these two displayed throughout their entire career, with both of these guys now kind of entering their sunset, I do think these two have skewed how we all perceive football and how we talk about players pretty heavily. And in turn, I do think some damage has been done, hence why I am claiming that these two have ruined football for a couple of generations to come. And real quick, boys, before I dive into that, if you're enjoying the video, enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. We do drop weekly football videos, so make sure to hit the notification bell as well so you don't miss an upload. And if you're not new to the channel, boys, welcome back. Glad to have you around for another video. But with that being said, boys, I need to talk about how Messi and Ronaldo have pretty much ruined football for a couple generations. So what the hell is this guy even yapping about, right? So I have a couple of reasons as to why I think these guys kind of ruined football. So I'll go through those reasons, and as I go along, I'll give a couple of examples. So please just let me land. So first things first, like I mentioned, they have pretty much skewed every single important metric that is involved when talking about footballers or football in general. I'm talking both long-term and short-term. In the long run, it will now feel nearly impossible for players from today onward to ever eclipse Ronaldo and Messi because of everything they have done and accomplished. For example, they've done so many crazy things, right? But of course, let's look at what's arguably the most important thing for an attacking player: goals. Messi over his career so far currently has 889 goals, and Ronaldo has 949, with both guys still adding to this tally until they retire. Mind you, these guys have 8 and 5 Ballon d'Ors respectively and countless tier 1 trophies, so really now the conversation for GOAT status is going to be one that for most future generations of football, they will be cooked in. For example, let's just take a look at someone like Erling Haaland. Haaland, without a shadow of a doubt, is arguably the best pure goal scorer of this current generation, and it doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. Of course, in terms of raw footballing ability, Haaland isn't the best, but in terms of just scoring goals, right? Just scoring output, he is by far, you could say, the best of this current generation. At just the age of 25, he already has 275 goals, but still so far away from either of these two guys, with significantly less silverware as well. I don't want to diminish any player. Realistically, when it comes to this type of conversation, we're already talking about the very best of the best. But if we're being real, it's gonna feel impossible for any of these guys to really make strong headwinds, especially in those long-term GOAT debates. There's gonna be a lot of settling for best of the rest, or best of the generation, or best goal scorer of XYZ time period. So already from that point of view, everybody else is cooked. So those generations of football have a lot of work to do. So that's the long-term end. Now if we're starting to talk about the short side of things, they've also heavily skewed what even constitutes a good season and what players even have to do in order to be considered the best in the world at a given time. Essentially, right, they have pretty much just set the standards up to the freaking moon as to what we as football watchers and analyzers and even just casuals consider to be the best player in the world in a given year. So stick with me here. I'm going to pick two random seasons from Messi and Ronaldo's career and kind of just see what they were, right? So for Messi, let's look at the 13-14 season. Here he got 41 goals and 14 assists in 46 matches in a season where he had some injuries. This year he won the Supercopa de España and Barca were runners-up in the Copa del Rey, earning himself second for the 2014 Ballon d'Or. For Ronaldo, let's see the following 14-15 season, so 1 year later. He got 61 goals and 23 assists while winning the UEFA Super Cup and seeing Madrid be the runners-up in the Supercopa de España, earning himself second in the 2015 Ballon d'Or. These were the standard. So again, I'm not diminishing any player that I'm comparing to these two in this exact conversation. I'm just giving you an example of what I'm talking about. So now let's take a look at the current Ballon d'Or winner with Ousmane Dembele. Last season, Dembele won the award after putting up 35 goals and 16 assists in 53 total matches while winning a treble. And yet for many, this still felt like a mediocre person to give the award to. We've reached a point following the dominance of these two where players can put up fantastic seasons, but because they aren't reaching the same level of these two guys who realistically were once in a lifetime, their efforts are being diminished. But even then, the way people now consume football seems to be extremely numbers based, more or less because these two were both putting up insane performances every single week, so the only way to genuinely differentiate between the two was goals and assists. You could watch both of them and be odd, so okay, now let's look at goals and assists, but now that they're not really there anymore, we're still doing that. For example, we're gonna stay in the conversation of this last Ballon d'Or. A lot of people consider Lamine Yamal to be Dembele's biggest competition for the Ballon d'Or after the amazing season he had from a performance perspective. He had a phenomenal Champions League campaign where they came up just short and was very important in Barcelona winning La Liga. But because his numbers were nowhere near Dembele's, a large portion of football fans were immediately looking to disregard Yamal's season. Gone are the days where players can have title-winning runs where they are the most important guys on the team while having jaw-dropping performances and still be considered the best in the world despite numbers being a little low. Think of guys like Ronaldinho, Kaká, who were key and pivotal to the success of their teams, their national teams. They were phenomenal players, but you know, their numbers just weren't through the charts, but they were still considered the best in the world at a given time. Of course, success from a silverware perspective will always be important, hence why Dembele won, but to many, they don't even care what a player is doing on a weekly basis. More so, they just care about raw numbers. I'm gonna give a pretty extreme example here, so just kind of stick along with me. But I think it's gotten to the point where, let's say, for example, Haaland goes on to win a domestic double while scoring 50 tap-ins in all competitions. I'm talking straight raw tap-ins. All the guy does is make a good run to the back post and tap it in. 50 goals, domestic double, that's all Haaland does. And Mbappe also wins a domestic double but scores 35 goals and is balling out every single week. He gets his team into games, he has a couple of good passing maneuvers here and there, a good solid 35 goals, Madrid won a double, and Mbappe clearly had a very important part to play in any success they had that year. If those two both had those seasons, I think people would want Haaland to win the Ballon d'Or. And again, that's not to diminish the idea of raw, pure goal scoring, but it's got to the point where people do not care what's even happening on the pitch. If the numbers are there, that's more important. And again, really, this is just a byproduct of these two putting up alien numbers every single season. So you now can see how much these two have really skewed what constitutes a player being considered the best and even what a player's legacy is even going to be. Meaning that for at least a few generations from here onward, they're going to be affected. I'm even thinking past the Lamine Yamal era that we're in. So that's more or less why I think they kind of ruined football. Of course, we all love these guys, right? If you're watching this video, you love one, you love the other, you love them both, or you hate them both. You cannot ignore that these two have been the protagonists in football for pretty much 2 years. They're still here until they retire, probably after the next World Cup. They are the protagonists of football, if we're being honest. If they breathe, if they blink, everyone's gonna talk about it. Let's just be real, okay? But really, I think we're witnessing the byproducts of what happens after you come off such a dominant era of a, player or period. But nonetheless, it's still gonna be an insane day when both of these guys retire. Could you imagine the scenes if both of them, after the World Cup, decide to retire that same summer? It's gonna be crazy. But for the near future, we're just gonna have to live through the effects of their era.